In the justice system, special snowflake offenses are considered especially heinous. On the internet, dedicated skeptics who investigate these vicious crimes are members of an elite squad known as the Special Snowflake Unit. These are their stories.
Welcome back, Wolfpack. Dire Wolf here, and hopefully you're hearing me just fine. We're going to be doing a little bit of a stream based on the debates, the Democrats' second debate. They had one on the 30th and 31st, and we're going to be responding to clips from that debate, the highlight reel, if you will, today. And along with me is my co-host, Mr. Foxalot.
Well, hello. It is very good to be here. I'm excited to talk about the debates. Not really, but they were very comedic. I will give them that.
It was entertaining in the same way that a train wreck is entertaining.
Yeah.
And that it was horrifying and you couldn't turn away.
I literally couldn't turn away. I was contracted to watch it.
Actually, the vast majority of people watching did turn away. Sorry, or who in America did turn away, because the Democrat debates have had some of the worst ratings out of any debates because no one cares what they have to say.
I'd love to see what the curve is like over the 2 hours. What the viewership drop off was, because even at those ratings, those are probably just the ratings for like the first half hour. I bet you it drops off pretty severely after that first half hour.
I bet you it did. But also, one of the biggest problems with the debates is the questions from the moderators have just been ridiculously biased against Trump and in support of certain candidates. There's also been the drama about the debates cutting the mic on Andrew Yang or giving excessive time to some people like Biden, while giving almost no time to people like Tulsi, right?
Yeah, moderators. I didn't see any moderators last night. I thought they were all running for president. I thought Don Lemon was going to throw his hat in the ring with the way he was talking.
Yeah, for sure. So the whole thing's just been a clown show for sure. But hey, you know what? Instead of just describing it, how about we just show some clips of it? Right?
That's a pretty wild idea.
What a crazy, wacky idea.
Does that even work on here?
I don't know. So the first highlight's going to be my favorite part of the debates was when freaking Tulsi Gabbard just outright destroys Kamala Harris. I mean, Tulsi shot her chances for being being elected to president in the face and stood over its bleeding body of Kamala Harris's reputation. It's dead. There's no chance Kamala Harris is getting elected to like anything from this point forward. And I might be overplaying this a little bit, but you tell me. It's pretty bad. Okay, here we go.
Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place. That impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Oh, look how uncomfortable she is.
Senator Harris, your response.
As the elected Attorney General of California, I did the work of significantly reforming the criminal justice system of a state of 40 million people, which became a national model for the work that needs to be done. And I am proud of that work. And I am proud of making a decision to not just give fancy speeches or be in a legislative body and give speeches on the floor, but actually doing the work of being in the position to use the power that I had to reform a system that is badly in need of reform.
Use power?
Created initiatives that were about re-entering former offenders and getting them
Wait. Use power? I think she means abused power. Well, I think it's hysterical that Tulsi says you kept people in prison after they could have been released for slave labor. You laughed at the fact that you smoked pot and, as an elite, did not get punished, but you imprisoned thousands of people for doing the same thing that you laughed about that you did and didn't get caught. And then, you were laughing about that. And also, what was the other thing? Oh yeah, you had evidence on a person who was on death row that you had evidence that would have released them from prison, and when they were about to be executed, but you didn't do it until a court forced you to. And your response to these accusations was, "I'm proud of what I did."
No, I didn't do that.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. No, I didn't do it. It was, I'm proud of it. Oh,
I think the part where she really screwed up though was not just saying that she was proud of it, but also saying, in essence, well, what have you done? You're just making fancy speeches on the House floor. Of all the people on that stage to insult their career in doing stuff, I don't think that you pick the veteran. That's not the right swing.
Yeah, Tulsi actually was saving lives with her bare hands in a battlefield.
Yes.
Jeez.
Actually fighting for freedom of people who needed it.
Whereas Kamala Harris was fighting to keep people from being free. Basically, she was trying to ensure that the state had the ability to have forced slave labor. That's what Kamala Harris, the person who decries slavery and says that we need to pay reparations, she was fighting for the state to have the right to slave labor.
It's so weird because she's from is it from California that she's from?
Yes.
That's what I thought, which is weird because I don't seem to remember the other 49 states ever having a problem in modern times with prison slavery, during the time that she was doing that. It's just so weird that of all the states, California is just, man, they aren't really doing what they say that they're doing.
Yeah. Let's finish the clip real quick.
All right.
It is why, and because I know that criminal justice system is so broken, that I am an advocate for what we need to do to not only decriminalize but legalize marijuana in the United States.
I want to bring Congresswoman Gabbard back in. Your response.
The bottom line is, Senator Harris, when you were in a position to make a difference and an impact in these people's lives, you did not. And worse yet, in the case of those who were on death row, innocent people, you actually blocked evidence from being revealed that would have freed them until you were forced to do so. There is no excuse for that. And the people who suffered under your reign as prosecutor, you owe them an apology.
Senator Harris.
My entire career, I have been personally opposed to the death penalty, and that has never changed. And I dare anybody who is in a position to make that to face the people
That's not a response to what she said. You haven't responded to the actual allegations because they're true, by the way. So she just deflects, I'm opposed to the death penalty. Then why were you holding back evidence that would have released a man who was hours from being executed when you knew the evidence against him was corrupted?
have face to say, I do not see.
That's just so.
That is my
Oh man, these guys are. She I think in particular, I think she's kind of like the dark horse of the snakes out of everybody. She has the most checkered history on doing things that are specifically the opposite of what she's supposedly standing for. I mean, Biden has the crime bill from the 90s, but she just has hundreds and thousands of cases for years and years.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, could you please, while we run the rest of the clip, reduce your volume on your Skype output by 15% ish?
What if I just move my mic further away? Does that work? Is that better?
You're still spiking pretty high compared to me and the audio.
I don't know if I can change my mic volume, actually.
If you can, it's all right. So let's finish up the clip.
I'll just talk quieter.
That is my background. That is my work. I am proud of it. I think you can judge people by when they are under fire, and it's not about some fancy opinion on a stage, but when they're in the position to actually make a decision, what do they do? When I was in the position of having to decide whether or not to seek a death penalty on cases I prosecuted, I made a very difficult decision that was not popular to not seek the death penalty.
No, you actually made the very difficult decision for you, maybe the immoral decision that anyone else could see, to intentionally ignore that the evidence you used to convict someone was corrupted. So, I mean, that's not really a difficult decision for most people who aren't horribly immorally corrupt people. Just want to point that out.
History shows that, and I am proud of those decisions.
Man. Thank you, Mighty Penguin, for following. We appreciate that. We're getting close. We've got 13 more follows to get to 200. And Triumvirate is excited for my dulcet tones of whispering now that I gotta be quieter.
All right. Thank you very much for the follow. So the story about Kamala Harris having evidence about a death row inmate's innocence that she only released after being forced to by a court order is referencing an old case where she was forced to, in 2010, to release the evidence. So in that case, Kamala knew that the crime lab that had processed the evidence had mishandled and likely tainted the evidence against the defendant, and that's the same evidence that was used to convict him. He may or may not be innocent. That still hasn't been decided. But the only evidence that was used, or the main evidence that was used to say he was guilty in the first place, was corrupt. And Kamala ignored the evidence, and was willing to let him. That would have let him go free if she had actually considered it or brought it up in court. The man, Kevin Cooper, came within hours of his execution. A court ruled in 2010 that the district attorney's office violated the defendant's constitutional rights by not disclosing what it knew about the tainted drug evidence.
So she's pretty much spent her career on the opposite side of what a lot of these quote unquote human rights council type organizations, where they're going around and trying to look through the evidence to make sure that there's nothing the police did wrong, and just kind of searching through that and then trying to launch cases over tainted evidence or missing chains of custody. She all of those things are supposed to be Democrat, very liberal type organizations, criminal rights type things. She's just been on the opposite side of that her entire career.
Yeah. The other thing that was in 2011, something referenced by Tulsi, the Supreme Court ruled in Brown versus Pallotta that California's prisons were so overcrowded that they violated the Constitution's prohibition of cruel and unusual punishment. Their prisons were so bad that simply being in the prison was cruel and unusual. 3 years later, after the ruling saying that the prisons were overcrowded, in early 2014, the state of California ordered to allow non-violent second-time offenders who have served half of their sentence to be eligible for parole. Lawyers working for Kamala Harris, district attorney's office, made the case in court against the California's ruling that some non-violent offenders needed to stay incarcerated, or else the prison system would lose a source of cheap labor. That was their argument. They're saying, don't release these people who have already served the entirety of their required by law sentence, because of the new law saying that they should be released after serving half their sentence, if they're non-violent. She's saying, no, don't release them. But by the way, she didn't release a bunch of them because she was litigating it in court. Because they do work in the communities for pennies rather than paying a living wage. Isn't she for the $15 hourly wage? Isn't she for that? Well, she
I
was
also
okay.
think that she's just anti-slavery. Also, I think that's one of her positions.
Yeah, but she totally, like in 2014, was pro-slavery and pro paying people way below a minimum wage.
As recently as far back, if you can remember, 5 whole years ago.
Oh wow,
Way back, machine.
that is a whole new level of hypocrisy right there.
Yeah, I mean, at least at the time, obviously, her being in the more political side of her job has corrupted her. But at least back then, she was honest. I mean, she at least had that going for her. Now she's not honest and is pro-slavery.
So how can you be pro-slavery and also pro-reparations at the same time?
Well, who are you going to give the reparations to if there's no slaves?
Is she going to give reparations to all those criminals she kept in jail for longer than they should have been? Ooh, I bet you a lot of them were white.
Were they? Well, if they were illegal, yes. If they were not illegal, then no. What kind of labor were they doing? Were they not cleaning up the? Or maybe they were cleaning up the poo, and maybe that's what happened. Maybe
And they stopped cleaning up
it's
poo.
it's all coming together now. She left. They let those people out, and then now no one's cleaning up the poo on the streets.
It sounds like solid logic there, Fox. A lot.
We we figured it out.
Oh wow. Yeah, but I think her political career, as far as her aspirations for becoming president, are over as of today. And because of this, Tulsi Gabbard wasn't the top searched before the debate, but in every single state after the debate, she was the top searched. But ironically, she wasn't the top trending on Twitter. Weird. Or
What was that hashtag, Dyer?
oh, it was Assad, wasn't it? Something Assad.
Oh, I was talking about the Tulsi destroys
Oh, yeah.
Kamala. Yeah.
That was.
Or it was Kamala hashtag Kamala destroyed.
Yeah, but trending above that was Assad, because there is a smear against Tulsi that she's somehow in bed with Assad, or she's somehow supportive of Assad.
I feel like we've seen that narrative before of a candidate being in bed with a foreign power. I feel like we've seen that one before.
Yeah, you know what? It didn't stop there. I know you guys are going to be shocked and dismayed, possibly, but directly after Tulsi just eviscerated Kamala's career and left it bleeding on the floor, the left-wing news media immediately switched to saying that she was a Russian plant, or that she was being supported by Russian bots. I shit you not.
Serious?
It was hilarious.
My God.
Okay, come on.
That's so
that narrative
outrageous.
didn't work for the last 2 years. Let's try it again. Anyone who goes against us is obviously a Russian bot.
Clearly. Oh my God, that is. Oh, Jesus Christ.
I mean, she's very, very critical of Trump. I don't even like Tulsi that much. I just like that she very accurately destroyed Kamala Harris. She is one of the best Democrats in which ones are available, right? She's not as radical. She is anti-war. That's why the Democrat establishments hate her, because they like Democrats, as in the elites, they hate the anti-war Democrats.
Yeah, I mean, she should be. She's part of that group of. There's a lot of people talking right now that the left, since they've gone so far off the rails, they haven't pulled the politics of America to the left. They've pulled so hard that they broke off, and then now the right's just kind of floating free. And even as a conservative, I like to hear some of the liberal policies sometimes, because I know what it looks like when the conservatives go way overboard, and so having her there to bring up what were traditionally 10 years ago Democrat talking points, policies, and thoughts. It's good to see her there trying to bring back at least some of that stability of rational positions, not just insane positions that nobody's listening to, but rational positions like the anti-war stuff. You know, a lot of her positions on that are they are well thought out when she's talking about them, and I agree with some of them. I disagree with other parts of them, but it at least is a rational debate to be had about them, as opposed to the Democrats just going insane and then the Republicans just not listening to them.
Yeah, I want to say thank you to Aruka for the lemon, and thank you to CT117 for the follow. So the thing is, Tulsi Gabbard, though I disagree with her, she is not insane, and she is a reasonable person, as is someone like Andrew Yang. Andrew Yang is wrong on a lot of stuff, but he doesn't say, if you disagree with me, you're obviously a monster that needs to be destroyed. You aren't automatically racist, you know. So she's someone who is reasonable on the other side, and I can respect that, you know.
Andrew Yang at least has the fortune that he's so anti-robot that nobody could possibly blame him for being held up by bots. No one could possibly believe that he's shilling for robots.
Oh, jeez. So the next clip I want to go over, if I got this in order, is Julian Castro. Here he is. Julian Castro let slip the Democrats' political theater around impeachment. What the hell? I might have to reload this page. 1 second. Here we go. Maybe. You gonna load? You gonna load? No? Yeah, no. Okay.
And what's going to happen in the fall of next year of 2020 if they don't
I hear
impeach him,
something.
is
There we
he's
go.
going to say, you see,
Let me start it over.
the Democrats didn't go after me on impeachment. And what's going to happen in the fall of next year of 2020 if they don't impeach?
This website.
Ironically, I just muted myself and watched it since I can't hear it through your side, and I actually just watched the whole thing.
And what's going to happen in the fall of next
Okay.
year of 2020?
Maybe
if
it's
they
gonna
don't
work.
impeach him?
It just keeps reloading.
I can just play it through my mic.
No,
Fall
we
of
got it.
next year of 2020, if they don't impeach him, is he's going to say, you see, the Democrats didn't go after me on impeachment. You know why? Because I didn't do anything wrong. These folks that always investigate me, they're always trying to go after me. When it came down to it, they didn't go after me there because I didn't do anything wrong. Conversely, if Mitch McConnell is the one that lets him off the hook, we're going to be able to say, well, sure, they impeached him in the House, but his friend.
Okay, so if you guys didn't catch that, this guy, thank you for being so honest, Mr. Castro. He says that the reason why it's so important for the Democrats to pursue impeachment is not because they think it will be successful, not because they think that there's anything real substance behind it, or because they think that Trump, who's already been exonerated for having committed any crime, not because they think he actually committed a crime. The reason why they want to push through the political theater of pushing the articles of impeachment is because they don't want to just be seen as giving up on impeachment because they were wrong. They want to push it up to the Senate, where the Senate will reject it. The Republicans in the Senate will say, no, this is ridiculous. Of course we aren't going to vote for this. And then they can use that as a political cudgel in the 2020 elections to say, ha, Trump had to be protected by his Republican friends in the Senate, and they were covering for him, and they're also Russian puppets.
I think it's just so amazing that the Democrat Party thought that it was valuable use of 2 hours to spend approximately 15 minutes of it talking about impeaching the president that they're going to be running against. Like, what interest is it to them that the president gets impeached? I mean, they've got to run against somebody, and they just like, well, let's not talk about his ideas, let's not talk about any Republican talking points, let's just impeach him, and then like one of us will get it. Like, we don't need to debate them on any of the facts or policies.
Well, the problem is they don't actually have anything they're running on. They have no like workable ideas. Most of their economic ideas would just lead into complete destruction of our economy. For some people, that's by design. But I mean, they have no real plans. The summary of some of their entire political platforms is give away anything free you ask for, and that's their plan.
More free shit.
More free shit. That's their plan, and no plan for how to pay for it all. And I'll give you
Pay for it.
If they do try to pay for it, this is how they're going to do it. And by the way, if any of them got elected, they're going to give you jack shit. Trump is a rarity. Like, he actually tried to fulfill on every campaign promise. These guys, these assholes, are going to fulfill maybe one iota of what they've promised. And how they're going to make, going to pay for it is simply to gut the middle class, raise taxes, force out business to other countries that have lower tax brackets, and destroy our economy. And you know what? That means that everyone is going to end up paying more in taxes, and they're going to have more control over your life. But yeah, don't worry. You'll have that free shit that probably is going to someone other than you anyways.
It almost sounds like being a slave. That sounds weird.
Well, we found out they're a fan of slavery recently.
Oh, yes, exactly. Dyer, did you look into that thing that they were talking about in the first debate about taxing savings plans? That's something I had heard about, but I hadn't had a chance to look into that anymore. I didn't know if you did or not.
I hadn't, but it is pretty absurd. The idea that they want to be able to go in, and if you already have a lot of savings that you've already paid taxes on, sometimes you've paid taxes on it multiple times, depending if it's a retirement savings. They want to take that money that's already been taxed at a high rate and tax it for sitting in your bank account.
Which is absurd because, as we all know, people who have a lot of money, your 1%ers, your 5%ers, even the 10%ers, people who have lots of money can very easily get that offshore so that it's not sitting in an American bank account for the government to steal out of. And then people on the lower end of the spectrum, your bottom 50, bottom 60%, they just don't have any savings at all. So you're talking about that middle part of your about 60 percentile to 90 percentile people, the middle class, so to speak, what's left of it. They're talking about just wiping away all your hard-earned savings. That bank account you got set aside for your kid's college fund, they're going to take out of it. That vacation you've been saving for, they're going to just steal right out of it. Just skim it all out of there, and you won't be able to do anything about it.
Yep. You know, the policies of high taxation, all it does is those who are the elites, those who are already rich, they will survive and they will remain wealthy. They are too far connected and have too far many loopholes to become not wealthy. However, what it will do, and won't affect those who are poor because they don't apply to the poor, what they will do is make sure that the poor and the lower classes never become middle class, and those who are middle class are forced down into the lower class. And
well, there's no reason. There's no need for a middle class anymore, Dyer. It's you're gonna have free college, free healthcare, free $1,000 a month, free cars, free electric cars. Everything's gonna have free renewable energy and all that stuff. Like, there's no reason for a middle class when everything's free.
Right. They don't want you to be able to have a system where it allows you to, on your own merits, earn those things for yourself. No, they want to make a system where everyone is equally poor, except for the elites, of course, that are going to rule over us. They want everyone to be equally poor and dependent on the state for all those giveaways. And at that point,
and if God forbid you have the audacity to plan ahead and save for the future, they're going to punish you for that.
Exactly. I want to take a thank you for Tetris Freak for that one lemon, and also for Shit Meme Dank Post for his lemon. Thank you very much. We love the lemons.
Yeah, Triumvirate. Taxing savings accounts would pretty much collapse the monetary system that we have right now. In theory, the printing of money that the government's already doing through inflation that causes your savings account to devalue, but people can't really see that, and the math is kind of tricky, so everybody just kind of gets over it. But in theory, that's also stealing out of your savings account. But if they were to do this, and that literal number of dollars that you see when you log into your bank account, if that goes down suddenly, and you look at your transactions, it's just like, oh, the IRS just took this, thanks. That's going to cause problems. That would lead to riots in the streets. I guarantee you. You think Antifa's rioted? You think the 7 Ku Klux Klan members have rioted? You wait until the IRS just takes 5 or 10% of everybody's savings accounts. There will be riots.
And when those riots happen, if they were to do this, it actually would still benefit the authoritarian dictators that are currently running for the Democrat Party, because they would be able to use the power of the government to crack down and to try to reestablish order. And in the end, they'll have taken back more control over the people, and it would just cement their the rule. You know, I think that'd be fine, but in their books.
That's what authoritarians love.
Yeah. So let's move on to the next highlight. These are kind of working out to be lowlights if you think about it.
I see what you did there.
Yeah. I'm pretty clever like that, making jokes involve words. All right, this one looks like it's going to load properly. This next one is Cory Booker makes an argument against a merit-based immigration system.
Vice President, you can't have it both ways. You invoke President Obama more than anybody in this campaign. You can't do it when it's convenient and then dodge it when it's not. And the second thing, and this really irks me because I heard the Vice President say that, if you've got a PhD, you can come right into this country. Well, that's playing into what the Republicans want, to pit some immigrants against other immigrants. Some are from countries, and some are from worthy countries.
I'm glad he recognized that there are shithole countries and countries that have, actual working, well-educated populace. But he's saying we should accept people who bring nothing to our economy, that come here with no job skills or education. But we already have a surplus of those workers. So the argument you're making here, Cory Booker, is that you want there to be even more competition for already high competition, type of job. That a lot of Americans that are in the low education, low skill market can't get work right now. And it's better under Trump. More jobs have been created in that sector than before Trump. But you want to make the competition for those jobs even harder?
Two things on that is first off, just did you see he could barely contain his grin while he was talking? He was so self-satisfied with his point he was making. He was just real genuinely excited to say it. He believed that was a great thing to say. But to your point you were just making about pulling in more people in market sectors that are already saturated with labor, that why can't we have $15 an hour minimum wage? Because there's so much labor, the market doesn't demand 15 hours. It's more down closer to 10 or $5. But that's why we have to artificially increase it, because there's so much labor, it drives down the price of the labor. But same thing with the PhDs as well. You've got just an epidemic of that's part of the student loan crisis. There's an epidemic of overqualified American students who are coming out of college and they can't get a job because their degree, quote unquote, makes them too expensive, and it's much cheaper for a company to hire, say a programmer from another country because they're willing to take less money for that. And with all of it's kind of strange because the Democrats view the economy as something to be manhandled and shaped and molded to their image of what it should be, whereas conservatives kind of think, well, the free market will it'll self-optimize. We don't need to really be that hands-on with it. But for somebody who thinks that the you need to have this really centralized planned economy. They aren't doing a real good job of planning it. If you were planning an economy, you'd think that you'd be pulling in immigrants in sectors that you needed them and not pulling them into sectors that are already saturated. So they're not even doing a good job at being centralized planners.
That's a good point. But yeah, this is a terrible idea. Even Bernie Sanders, Bernie kicked out of a commune for being too lazy Sanders, said that we can't just have open borders because we can't take care of everyone on Earth. Right? We can't. There is a limit to how many people we can take care of, and that limit is exacerbated by what they actually provide to our economy. If they come here and they are only a taker, I mean, they come here and they immediately are dependent on the state, dependent on tax dollars, and cannot actually produce in the economy, that means, I mean, yeah, it's not good for our country. We got to consider the quality of life of the people living here. Have you ever been in one of those cities where there's been a lot of illegal immigration, a lot of influx of low-wage workers or low-skill, low-education workers? You'll see the communities are horrible. They live in overcrowded, undersupplied areas with lots of shit in the streets, a lot like LA. You know, this is the direct result of a huge influx of labor without the jobs, and it affects everyone living there.
And all that does is just breed crime, resentment. There's, you know, it goes into that social fabric kind of idea of, you know, you gotta mix them in lightly. You gotta have a little bit of lower income jobs, you know, mixed into you know, your zoned cities, you know, mix those in with higher skill jobs, you know, kind of patchworks of lower and higher income housing in the same area. But if you just flood low income, low skill into one big area, there's no place for those people to like look up to. There's nowhere in their immediate vicinity that they could say, oh well, maybe if I learned this, or if I, you know, wanted to get motivated to do that, I could go get this job that's still within my reach, you know, still within driving distance of wherever I'm living at. But if you just flood and super saturate these areas, there's nowhere within hundreds of miles for them to even go to do that. There's just nowhere for them to look up to. And so all they see is that poverty, and that's all that they think that they can attain. And it just propagates itself.
And another thing is, so when you have a lot of poor people, like you said, it encourages crime. Because when people have, you know, not enough resources, they get desperate, and you know, a lot of people will resort to committing crimes if that's the easier route. If being the honest, making a living an honest way is too difficult, then a lot of people will opt to do it a less honest way, right? So low income crime is more common among low income people. It's just a fact. So when you create a scenario where you are creating communities of artificially, or because of your policies, poorer people with less resources and less public you know, support, then you're going to breed that crime. And that leads into the next video, where Cory Booker calls out Trump for calling Baltimore rat and crime infested. So here's that next video.
Calling it a disgusting, rat-infested, rodent mess. We need a nation that understands that these tired, old language,
So the first part of this video is he was calling out Trump for saying it was rat and crime infested, right, in Baltimore. The president on Saturday, last Saturday, said on Twitter that an African-American lawmaker that was in charge of the district of Baltimore, his name was Elijah Cummings, he said that he represents a disgusting rat and rodent infested mess, which is true.
Yeah, it's actually descriptive.
Yeah, so there's lots of videos and pictures of all the huge mounds of human waste and trash that is piled up along the streets that has not been cleared out, and how the homes are run down. There are rats and bugs, cockroaches everywhere. There is historically high crime and historically low and high poverty in that area. What Trump is calling attention to is a real problem. Now, Cory Booker calls Trump's words tired and old, implying that Trump's use of the word infested is a tired and old racist trope, referencing several news stories recently. For instance, Fox published an article saying how Trump used century-old racist tropes to attack Baltimore, saying that they said that Trump saying that Baltimore, was in disrepair and needed better government policy. He's saying that's attacking Baltimore rather than calling attention to a real problem in Baltimore. I'd say calling attention to a problem and saying it needs to be fixed is helping, not hurting. Also, The Guardian published an article that said whenever Trump says infested, we know he's talking about people of color. So Trump,
Maybe
Fox,
they do.
racist?
The rest of us don't.
Fox,
Weird how they keep hearing those dog whistles.
yeah, isn't that a little racist?
That's pretty racist.
So Trump didn't say that infested meant racist. Meant people of color, and most people don't see it that way. But I think it's pretty telling that the Democrats think that the word infested is synonymous with people of color.
It's funny because somehow I missed that the Baltimore thing over the weekend, and I think it was late Sunday. My awareness of it came via tweet from I think it was that article, and I read the headline saying Trump uses infested like in a racist way, and they actually had in the same tweet not just with the headline, but they had a screenshot of Trump's tweet, and so I could read it right there. I didn't have to go anywhere to see it, and in the tweet I could see that that's not what he said. It was just like it was within 2 square inches they had just said something and then also attached a screenshot debunking the thing that they had just said. It was amazing.
Well played. So the thing is, they're saying that Trump saying that Baltimore is rat infested and crime infested is racist. So when the black residents of Baltimore have been calling out for years saying that they have a huge trash problem, huge rodent problem, and huge crime problem, are they also racist? Or how about when the local newspapers in Baltimore, the Baltimore Sun, I believe it is, when they published a multitude of articles saying that the government needs to stand up and do something about the trash in the streets and the high crime rates, to put more police on the streets to protect the people. Is the Baltimore Sun also residents of Baltimore? Are they racist?
Yes.
Or it's only racist because Orange Man bad? Right?
Probably that one.
I'm starting to lean toward that solution. that explanation.
It's funny too because the Democrats are. It's actually it's very rude and tragic. More tragic than rude. But the Democrats, they could have taken this opportunity to say, they could have called Trump's bluff. They could have been like, you know what? You're right, Mr. President. What are you going to do about it? We would love to have some federal funds. Let's get a cleanup crew in here. Let's have, activate one of the 1,000 government agencies to come in here and to help us clean up the streets. Let's do a big medical campaign. Let's get vaccination vans out there. They could have called his bluff, and he really wouldn't have had a choice at that point if they had called his bluff. And then they could have had aid being flown in there by helicopters this week and gotten the problem fixed. That could have been really easy. But instead, they're just like, oh, nah, like there's no rats here. Trump's lying. He's just lying, and he's a racist.
Yes,
And
they actually missed out on a great opportunity because it would have been bipartisan support for fixing this problem, because Trump would like, oh, I'm winning points with the minority communities, and I'm actually calling attention to a real problem. That's all win for Trump, and it's all win for Baltimore actually having the problems that have been in their communities that have been ignored for many years under Democrat leadership finally being addressed. And you know what? It's kind of, even though it's something they've been ignoring it, it would totally be in line with the Democrats' talking points to want to help these kind of communities. It would have been a win-win for everyone if they could have just resist the knee-jerk reaction to say anything Trump says, we must say the opposite, and whatever he said, it must be said because it was racist. It is ridiculous.
it is. It's really, and again, it's sad for the actual people of Baltimore. There's people who are living there in those conditions, and if they happen to have flipped on the news, assuming that they can even get cable, because again, it's that dilapidated that it might be hard for them to even watch the debates. But they're watching these people talk about their city, and they're like, "There's no problems here. The president's just a racist," and they're sitting there thinking, how does that rhetoric help my situation at all? And the answer is that it doesn't at all.
Absolutely. So Trump keeps making comments that are things the Democrats themselves have argued for. And because he said it, they then say it's not a real thing. The Democrats themselves, all leading up to Trump, have talked about the crisis at the border, the problems of not having border security. And so because he supports it, he gets to have them say it's all imaginary, it's all just a hoax for a long, long time, and then finally having to admit later on that it wasn't a hoax. Every time he takes up one of their own positions, I think it's a strategy of his, where he says he makes public statements about stuff that they used to argue for, just so they will argue against it and make themselves look like hypocrites. And when doing so, they're making Republican voters. They are manufacturing people who will vote for Trump because they're like, hey, the Democrat Party, all of them in the entire country, are saying these problems we've been complaining about for years, for some people, their entire adult lives, isn't real. They're attacking the person trying to call out for support for us. And they're like, you know what? I'm voting for Trump now because he actually gives a fuck about me.
The extended version of that clip, if it had gone past where Booker got cut off by the hecklers, he went on to say that Trump calling the city rat infested was him demagoguing. And the quick everybody keeps hearing that word demagogue, but like the actual definition of it is a leader who obtains powers by means of impassioned appeals to emotions and the ignorance of a populace. And so Cory Booker said that Trump describing the city accurately as literally rat infested, he said that was an appeal to emotion and ignorance. He said that was a demagogue. And if you guys go back and watch the clip, Booker uses the word demagogue. But immediately following that sentence, saying that Trump describing the city as it literally is demagoguing, Cory Booker went on to say that what we actually need is to move forward and unite in our common destiny. Because that means something. Because those words have meaning of
hope and change.
Hope
and change.
Yes. I'm sure that the rats heard that we were going to move forward together, and they're like, "Oh dang! Like we better get out of here, and we're going to take all the garbage with us."
Exactly. Jeez Louise.
So, but that kind of back to what you're saying, just the Democrat. If you could sum up the Democrat policy, the DNC policy for 2020 with like one thing, it's just ignoring problems. Like that's what it is, and that's what it's been for at least a decade now.
Right. They stand for nothing except for going against Orange Man bad, right? They have no real policies of their own, and any real policies that could do good that have been suggested, they're against them because they must be only proposed for some racist reason rather than an actual practical reason. They're like, oh yeah, the border security was good until Trump wanted it. Supporting, cleaning up of Baltimore is a good thing until Trump wanted it. By the way, thank you very much, Slowpoke, for the $2 tip. Very much appreciated.
Thank you, buddy.
Yep, and I don't see a message along with it yet, but I will take a look in a moment. In any case, so the hecklers, you mentioned those. So there were some hecklers that were there on the Tuesday debate, right? And so if you didn't hear what they were saying, they were
Or was that the Wednesday debate? That was the Wednesday debate.
Was it? Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Either way, at the debate, they said fire Plantelio, which is the name of the New York cop that was not charged, or that the New York Police Department chose not to charge in the death of Eric Garner. Now, if you remember the story of Eric Garner was selling singles cigarettes on the street, and when they came to stop him and detain him for selling cigarettes illegally, because it is illegal to sell cigarettes without collecting the tax like that, on the street, because there's a massive tax on cigarettes.
Come on, like that was not a conservative policy. That was clearly a Democrat policy,
right,
to try and pull in more taxes. I mean, they control that city for how long?
So when you put a tax on someone, or you apply a new restriction or regulation on someone, you got to remember that you are doing so under the threat of violence when you're using the government. And a lot of people, I don't think they realize, we're just trying to, create some behavioral, change in society. We're trying to do some social engineering. It's nothing big. We're just trying, we're going to make this illegal, and they'll have no social consequence. We'll just make that thing we don't like go away. No, because now some people are still going to want to do that thing you don't like, and you're saying we can use violence against you to make sure you don't. And anytime you're applying a tax to somebody, same deal. That tax is enforced with violence of the police. So I don't think people realize that. But anyway, so the police are put in this position where they have to use force because they're following the law made by Democrats to stop someone from selling cigarettes on the street. Which, by the way, I think is a ridiculous law. If someone wants to sell cigarettes on the street, I don't give a fuck. All right.
It's completely ridiculous, but what's more ridiculous is to expect cops to, I don't know, I guess be Judge Dredd on the streets and just decide I'm going to not enforce this law today because reasons. Like that's the whole point of having legislators, is that they decide what the laws are, the cops get to enforce them. It's not, we passed this dumb law and like that cop should have just known not to enforce it.
Yeah, what insane kind of policy is that? So in any case,
sounds like a Democrat policy.
Exactly. So Eric Garner, he got confronted by police. He resisted arrest a lot, and they were forced to take him to the ground aggressively, following their training. And this is why the police officer was not put in jail. He now is putting the guy in a headlock. He is not choking him to death as is claimed. The guy is very, very obese, and he dies from a heart attack in the middle of the struggle. So Eric Garner died while being detained, or attempted to be detained, by the police for selling cigarettes. Now,
all he had to do was not resist arrest.
Exactly. Right? Not that I think resisting arrest means it's okay for the police to just go out and kill you, right? Because obviously that's not what the police were intending to do. They were not going with the intent to kill this guy. It wasn't some sort of racist thing where this is a black guy, let's kill him. No. And they also have the power to give him a heart attack on command, by the way. That's not the power that police have.
Really? That's I thought that was one of their tools.
I mean, they're well trained, but not that well trained.
the death grip.
Yeah. So yeah. Anyways, it is ridiculous. I actually would say it's the Democrat leadership that created the scenario that killed Eric Garner. The police were doing the job that they were being paid for and instructed to do so by their Democrat leadership, the civilian leadership. So, and again, the cops didn't kill him. He died from a heart attack for being horribly out of shape. So, but anyways, the hecklers were saying that he should be fired, and that why they were yelling that out was because the New York City mayor was Bill de Blasio was actually one of the candidates that was on the stage at the time. So, and he's got no chance of winning either. But anyways, that's what was behind the heckling. The next highlight is Congressman Delaney and also Nick. I don't know how to say that guy's last name, but it's something about. I forgot how to say it. Anyways,
where's it at? Highlight it for me. I'll try and read it. Oh,
I didn't even write it in there because it's so hard to read.
okay.
So it's like Nicka Looper or something like that, or whatever. Doesn't matter.
Nicka Fruit Loops.
Yeah,
Let's go with that.
It's got Looper in the name. It's gonna be on the screen in a second. It's Hickenlooper, Nick Hickenlooper, and John Delaney. So these two guys have zero chance of winning, and they almost have 0% of the polls, but together. But they're on stage, and they are two moderate candidates that actually made a pretty good call out to all the socialists on the stage. I think you guys should hear this. I thought it was entertaining. If it plays. Come on, play. Maybe I'll start playing here in a second. Anyways, he's basically calling them out for saying that their policies were impractical. It does nothing to help, Democrats to promise a bunch of things that they can't actually deliver, and they should be talking about real policies. Not fantasies. I'm like, someone on a Democrat stage actually said that. That's great.
Wait, was that the one that what the heck's her name? Warren responded to? That was like, I didn't go all this way to like tell everybody what we can't do, and we should be coming up with these like big bold ideas. Is that the one?
Yes, that was exactly. She did respond to that. Oh,
yeah,
big
she's basically,
grand ideas. Yeah, like.
Yeah, he was like, we need to stop having these pie in the sky like fantasies, and she's like, no, more fantasies.
That helps no one to say you're going to promise something that you can't actually do. That's just a lie. It's kind of like saying that you're Native American when you know you're not. It's a lie.
What do we want? Broken campaign promises. When do we want them? Now.
Oh, it's ridiculous. In any case, so they had that, and then the last highlight for me was that multiple Democrats throughout the debates used that's just a Republican talking point when they were asked a question about their policies. Which, by the way, is not actually a defense. In fact, it's saying, I don't have a defense for the question you came up with, so I'm going to ignore it, say it's Republican, which is code word for like racist or something, and I'm just going to go on and say what I want to say instead of answering your question, because that's what a Republican would ask. Well,
I feel like it'd be more efficient if they were just like, all right, we're going to set aside 2 hours, and instead of just having you guys spew nonsense at each other, we'll just divide the 2 hours up evenly, and you guys can just each run a really long-form campaign ad. Because that's all that they do anyways. Like, whenever they get a question, they never answer the question. They'll spend 3 seconds diverting from it, and then they'll go into some kind of canned presentation, and then and nothing's been gained or no information was conveyed.
Well, that's how that congressman prep for a freaking debate. They just take things that they think are going to be said, and then they'll
can sound bites for it, and then as soon as something that's like related to that, they'll just kind of cue it up in their head, and then they go into it. And Rubio's problem back in the last round of elections, was because he didn't have enough of those little canned presentations ready to go, and he just kept saying the same one over and over again.
Yeah, poor Rubio.
But it is to your point though. There was multiple ones saying the same thing. I believe it was multiple different ones, all talking about, that's a Republican talking point, and I'm not going to address it. And so I don't know if one of them heard the other one say it, and they just like, oh, that's a good one, I'm going to use that line too, or if they like coordinated that. But it was weird because it happened a couple of times, and it was, it wasn't the best defense, but they kept using it.
Oh, I'll bet you they have a lot of the same advisors, or advisors getting their information from the same sources. I don't think they were coordinating their campaigns. But yeah, so definitely they thought that was a convincing strategy to tell for their audience that if we just say, oh, that idea, that question is somehow related to Republicans, that way we don't have to answer it. No, dummy. If that is a question that a Republican would ask, then that means you even more need to have a defense for it. That means that if you ever do get the nomination and you eventually go up against a Republican like Trump, or all the critics you're gonna have on the right wing media, they're gonna be saying those things, and are you gonna have a defense for it? And apparently not.
And who does which demographic is that like talking to? I mean, it's basically like saying like, oh, well, it's so obvious that what the answer is, like, it's not even worth addressing. But I mean, what part of the moderate base of the country is that going after, where it's just like, oh yeah, if you can't see what I see without me saying it, like, you're probably just dumb because it's really obvious. It doesn't help anybody. The whole point of them having the debates is to convey their stance on issues, not just say, yeah, like, I mean, I think my stance is pretty obvious, and if you can't see that, you're probably dumb.
Right, and in no world would they let Trump get away with such a defense. Oh, that's just a Democrat talking point. Oh, they're like, the next article's gonna be like, oh, racist orange man doesn't have a defense for the Democrat questions. Yeah, but they would definitely attack him for that. But when the Democrats say, oh, that's just a Republican talking point, oh yeah, nodding their heads, yeah, that's a reasonable argument. We don't need to talk about it because it's something a Republican would say.
I feel like I'm gonna be sadly disappointed when at some point, especially after Trump gets reelected, at some point in the next 6 years, some like legit, like, quote unquote legitimate mainstream outlet will put out a title that is racist orange man in the title, like, unironically, and you're gonna be sad that joke you just made wasn't a joke anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I've already made several jokes about how absurd the left could get, and they became real, and I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah,
am I a
it's harder and harder to satire
jokes?
now.
I don't know anymore.
You just can't satire them.
The left is beyond satire. You cannot satirize them anymore. They will just see it as a challenge and surpass it.
It's the ultimate defense.
I don't know. Like you said earlier, they've lurched so far to the left that they've broken free from the left, and I don't know. I think that the Democrat Party is going to have a collapse and reformation. And when they do that, if they go back to a more centrist, policy, they'll pull a lot of people who are currently voting Republican right now, because there's a lot of people who are left wing, socially, they're more liberal socially, and even support more a larger government that would make up that party that are currently voting for Trump, right?
If there's some kind of, I don't know if they're capable of that kind of reformation, at least anytime soon. But if they could,
we're talking like 10, 20 years.
Yeah, Yeah, if in 10 years from now they can kind of, if they collapse and kind of reform themselves with, kind of the anti-war stance, bringing back a lot of that libertarian kind of socially laissez-faire, just leave people alone, like everybody wants to do their own thing, like let them do their own thing, and like don't let the angry Christians harass them, that kind of a thing. If they could get back to that, where it's just let people live, live and let live. Let's go back to some anti-war stance. Pull in some of Yang's crazy sci-fi stuff. If they could reform a party with kind of those at the core, I think you'd pull a lot of people over to it.
Absolutely, and they'd still maintain those regressive far leftists. That's the crazy thing is they're trying to court the far left because they think, that's where we'll get our voting block from because they're the ones that are very politically involved, so more likely to vote, right? In their mind, they're chasing that group, but that group is becoming a smaller pool. The more specifically they are pandering to them, to the point where they're pandering for a tiny group that will not get them elected. I think that they're probably 10 to 20 years. It would take them that long to reform into a party that can be viable again after all the damage they're doing this election cycle. But if they had one reformer like Tulsi Gabbard who was allowed to succeed, wasn't crushed by the Democrat establishment, I think she could probably do it in as low as 8 years, two election cycles.
And it's desperately needed. As with many people who identify as conservative, definitely for me. I mean, you can answer for yourself, Dyer, but I'm conservative. I'm not a Republican. There's a distinction there, and so I don't want an unrestrained Republican Party in power. That doesn't work for me very well because they tend to overshoot certain things that are not conservative principles. And so I would love to see, again, a worthwhile, not just like a crazy opposition, but like a worthwhile structured opposition that, you have some good debates and come up with better ideas, not just whatever the heck they are doing.
Yeah. You make a good point, and that's my philosophy as well. So I have what I believe, and I'm a conservative. And Trump has been wrong many times. And he doesn't believe in everything I believe. I support him because he is better than the alternative. He is the closest politically to me out of what is available to me to vote for, right? However, no matter who the Republicans put up as their candidate, no matter where they fall on the spectrum, I haven't moved. I believe what I believe. I will vote for whoever best suits or is closest to my interest as possible. And that's because I'm not a tribalist. And then that's the problem is we do have a lot of people in our country and in the world that are tribalists, where they just want to be on the winning side or they want their side to win, right? It doesn't really matter what the actual policies, morals, or principles that the group they are part of stands for, as long as their side wins, which is a terrible way to live, a terrible philosophy to have.
And I think the just simplest example of that, of what you just said, is literally what you just said, and I agree with you. There's a lot of times where we're like, I don't really like that thing that Trump did. I really don't like what he's doing with the debt, i.e. he's not doing anything with it, which is a big problem.
There's doing nothing with it.
Yeah, absolutely nothing. There's some other things that I'm not real big fan of it, and if people bring that up, I'm like, yeah, like I don't support that. But I don't got a problem saying that. But if you were to jump back 4 years ago, any opposition to anything Obama did, oh, well, you're probably a racist then. You're just saying that because he's black, aren't you? And there was no room for any kind of criticism from his supporters. But for Trump's supporters, we'll throw him under the bus, every other day just for one thing or another. But that's just because that's the conservative position. Is, again, it's not that tribalist. It's a set of principles. And tribalism, you focus around these personalities, and the personality is never wrong. But on at least our version of conservatism, we've got a set of principles, and you've got people who check a lot of those boxes, but not necessarily all of them, and they can easily drift away from those boxes. There's a lot of examples of politicians that, they went into office and they were checking a lot of those conservative principles off, and then they drifted. But we didn't follow their personality. We stayed with our principles. They moved away from that. And so having that principles focus allows you to look at your leaders with a lot higher fallibility. Whereas if you're looking at it from a tribal perspective and you're looking at it based on that cult of personality, which I know a lot of people said that was what Trump had, but it really maybe there is a few people with that, but not broadly. But on the left, they really like that cult of personality. And so whatever that person says, it always has to be right, regardless of if it contradicted something previously.
There are people on the conservative side, the Republican side, that do follow Trump because they're tribalistic. There are lots of people like that, and the media would love to get them on recording because they don't make great arguments. They're just like Trump's great because he's great, right? And
Orange man good.
Yeah, Orange man good. Those people exist, and they're equally dumb.
Yes.
Okay, because that's a chaotic way to live your life, where whatever you believe is right is just based on whatever the group you're a part of and leader says, right? That means you stand for nothing, right? That's a dumb way to live. It
means you haven't thought out your positions, because
right.
if you, as soon as you think out your positions and you set up what those principles are, and you're like, well, I'm going to stick to those. Or if I change them, I need a really good reason to change them. But if you're just attached to the person, you could flow any which way. Wherever that person blows, you're going with them.
So people tend to be more inclined to being tribalistic if they lack information and also critical thinking. And this is something that has to be taught to people, right? So that's one reason why I think that we really need to have a better school system in our country, because if you don't know about different philosophies and ways of thinking and economic systems, then you don't know what the other options are. So step one is being limited in your information. You can just default to believing in the only thing you know. That's one thing that the regressive left have done, is they control a lot of universities where they teach a certain thing is the only thing that is true. This is the only thing you need to know. This is the philosophy of life, social justice. If they teach you nothing else, and all you know is everything that you know is based off of the social justice ideology, then they're controlling what you think, because they've controlled what information you have. Second thing is, if they don't... Sorry?
Oh, I was just going to say, and as a philosophy, social justice is so self-contradictory, and you don't have a choice but to follow some kind of personality, because the principles don't line up on their own. They don't stand up just by themselves. You have to have some kind of thought leader to tell you what to think, because if you try and figure it out just with SJW principles, you can't do it, because they don't hold up just on their own.
Right. That's definitely true. The second part to the building blocks that lead to someone being prone towards being tribalistic is not teaching them critical thinking. Critical thinking, some people develop it on their own, but for a lot of people, it's a skill you have to learn by actually trying to think critically, and it's a skill that if you learn it earlier, when you're going through schooling and you view the information you're bringing in through a critical lens, you become a lot more intelligent for it, right? And I have had to deal with some people in the military who they went through college, they got degrees, but they never learned to really evaluate the information and break it into its parts and be critical of stuff they learn, right? And that's a problem, because then you're more prone to that coincides with what I've always been told, and that's what the leader is currently saying, so it must be true.
Yeah, and your critical thinkers, they have the ability to enter situations where there's not a defined correct answer, and so they have to come up with a way of how do I get to whatever the right answer is, and how do I know what the right answer is? Because there's nobody, in real life, there's no way to flip to the back of the book and check what the answer to that math problem is. But if you've never learned critical thinking and you always think, oh, well, there must be a right answer, and if I just ask the teacher, they'll tell me what the right answer is. If you kind of go through that mentality, or that mentality for your life, and you don't go through the critical thinking where you are again deconstructing those problems and trying to work it out for yourself, and you're just waiting for somebody to tell you what the answer is, that's what leads into a lot of this kind of cult of personality that we see on the left, is they're not thinking it through for themselves, and they're waiting for somebody to give them that answer.
So when I have to do training for someone, particularly when I'm dealing with an NCO, and they come to me with a problem saying, hey, Sergeant, we have this problem, and I don't know how to solve it. Instead of just saying, oh, well, here's what you need to do to fix it, I ask them questions. I say, okay, so what do you think is causing that outcome? And then, oh, so what are the factors that are leading to that happening? Okay, so which of these factors you think is something that, or what do you think is causing this particular factor, this this limiting factor to exist? And I talk with them all the way back to the original problem, and then they might have thought, oh, I got a personnel problem. I got people that are just not working hard enough. They're not working fast enough. When they realize, after talking through it, the questions they should have asked themselves, but I'm trying to teach them critical thinking. Oh, they're working slower because the ability for them to get the supplies to do the job is being restricted by something else that is fixable easily. And so instead of saying my guys are not doing their jobs, I need to discipline them, no. You need to go and fix your supply chain. You got to teach critical thinking.
Yeah, and that's I'm just thinking through here of how that relates to the issue of what's going on with the Democrat debates and the presidential election in general. Well, no, I
know we went off topic. I got it.
No, I've got the way that it connects back to it. I was just thinking through it, and it's sadly, I think the problem is, you're right, it is a education problem, and that's kind of scary, because that means that there's that lack of critical thinking is kind of built into the existing population, right? So we don't current. What's that?
That's what I was getting at. Is that what I was trying to circle back around to is that the Democrats, they depend on people being tribalistic.
Yes.
That's why they say, oh, it's a Republican argument or Republican talking point. And they depend on their populace being convinced easily by emotional reasoning rather than actual facts and evidence. Because as you know, being factually right is not as good as being morally right. The feeling of being morally right. So they know who they're talking to. That's their expected audience. People who use emotional reasoning and who are very tribalistic. And that's why these arguments they make to us conservatives who are more critically inclined, that's why their arguments seem so absurd to us. They're not made.
Sly Blue Paw. Yeah, Sly Blue Paw says. Sly Blue Paw. There we go. Says, I'll be honest, you guys really lost me what you guys were talking about. That might happen on these Thursday, Tuesday streams. Dyer and I are just trying to be less scripted and kind of talk more off the cuff. So it is possible we will often get into tangents that we might lose people on, but we will try not to do that. But to kind of maybe help you out, just to summarize what it is we were kind of talking about the last 10 minutes was Dyer made we were talking about what the Democrats are doing to exploit the people that are supporting them, and the way that they're trying to convince on an emotional argument level. And the type of people who are convinced by emotional arguments are people who aren't as good at critical thinking. And then Dyer made the point that the current lackluster education system that we have in America does not teach critical thinking, and that is why we have a population that is broadly susceptible to emotional arguments, and the Democrats know that, and they're trying to exploit that.
Yeah, so my father, after doing 21 years in the Army, he went and became a teacher. I think he saw the same problem I see, and I actually feel very motivated to become a teacher because of this problem.
It's hard. I know I didn't learn critical thinking in school. I mean, that was outside of school that I learned that. It's
Hey, buddy, what you doing here? So my son just walked into my office while we're streaming. Hey, buddy.
It is way past
It
bedtime.
is way past bedtime. What are you doing awake? Oh, don't click that. That's definitely a stream deck, and that will change the screen. Oh, we're not going to watch Polly. We're doing a live stream. We're almost done.
He's gonna learn how to produce, and I won't have a job.
Yeah, I'm training up my kid right now to be able to. Oh, 1 second. I think that is the cue. So thank you guys all for watching. I really enjoyed doing these midweek streams with you guys. In any case, I will be going off air here shortly. And thank you very much, Foxlot. You did a great job co-hosting.
It was a great time. I enjoyed it very much.
We will be doing the Saturday show very, we're doing the regular news, a weekly news recap coming here shortly on Saturday, and we will do a Wednesday show, and sometimes, not usually going to be scheduled, we'll be doing Tuesdays and Thursdays. So please join us. We're trying to give you as much content as possible, but I really enjoy doing this. The debates are always fun to watch. By fun, I mean excruciatingly cancerous.
Have a good rest of the week, guys.
Thank you, guys. Dire Wolf, out.